Welcome to the Sports Card Talk Show. Sports Card Talk Show with Kevin Anderson and Lauren Walker, the Skol Brothers.
Welcome to episode 33 of the Sports Card Talk Show. We have another Monday Mount Rushmore coming at you. Who do we got going today?
Today is the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, the Browns.
Yep. Yeah, and we have James from at baseballcardexchange on Instagram joining us to help us out with this with the Cleveland Browns.
Right. Should be interesting. Should we get him on the phone?
Jingle, jingle.
All right, we got James on the line at Baseball Card Exchange on Instagram. Nice enough to join us to talk a little Cleveland Browns football, little Mount Rushmore action. How you doing today?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, man, we're glad to have you. You want to...
Well, the Browns in recent history haven't been that good, but you guys have a really rich history, and I'm excited to hear what your idea of the Mount Rushmore and the best players in franchise history are. So
yeah, it's kind of unique. I guess you could say there's very unique chapters in the franchise's history. I think in the first 18 years, 20 years they existed, they were pretty much like the New England Patriots of today.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They won 8 championships in 18 years.
Oh, wow.
And then, obviously, from going to that success to the success they had in the 80s, and then you lose the franchise in the 90s, and they go to Baltimore. And then for a couple of years, there's no team at all. And then since we've come back, we've only had, one playoff appearance, and we lost.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So when you look at the chapters, it's almost like 3 different franchises.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Browns have been the laughing stock of the league for the last 20 years, and that hasn't always been the case, obviously.
Well, yeah, and since they had the new franchise, the expansion franchise, so to speak, having no success really, and then in the 80s having the era of disappointment
Mm-hmm.
with the Cardiac Kids and Red Right 88, with the drive, the fumble.
Yep.
Just you can almost have a Mount Rushmore of devastation or disaster events.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be pretty easy to do.
Right.
Yep.
But I think with the honorable mention, one of the guys that I picked is Joe Thomas, and he's one of those guys that you could throw into that recent era of little success, but he was 11-time or 10-time Pro Bowler, 9-time All-Pro, and he was sort of the Cal Ripken of football. Over 10,000 consecutive snaps.
Wow.
Without missing a play. And he was on one of the teams that had a little bit of a run and just missed the playoffs. And even though the teams were bad, he was like that constant force, that constant presence. And I think, in 5 years or so, he'll be a Hall of Fame inductee, first ballot.
Oh, yeah.
We'll probably consider one of the best left tackles in football. And so he'd probably be my first guy to put on the honorable mention.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the only guy from this modern era, unless this current team ends up doing something special.
Right.
And then for my second guy in the honorable mention, I had Ozzie Newsome.
Yep.
And he came to the Browns right at the beginning of the Cardiac Kids era. And he ended up becoming one of the greatest tight ends in football. In 3rd grade, one of my classmates won a contest at the local grocery store, and Ozzie came and spent the whole day at our class.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah. And then he spoke at a little assembly with the whole school, but then he spent the whole afternoon with us.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was kind of a neat experience. And a lot of the Cleveland fan base has mixed feelings about him because when Art Modell took the Browns to Baltimore, eventually Ozzie joined that group and was successful. And they won, I think 2 Super Bowls in Baltimore, I believe. And Ozzie Newsome was general manager. And Ozzie Newsome learned a lot of Bill Belichick's systems as far as drafting and as far as building your roster. And so I put Ozzie Newsome in the honorable mention category. And then in the 80s era, linebacker Clay Matthews, which he was number 57, Clay Matthews Jr.'s dad.
Yep.
And what's kind of unprecedented for even the 80s or the modern era, a linebacker playing 18 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
You just don't hear about that anymore.
No.
You know, usually it's about, if you play 9, that's considered a long career as a linebacker.
Oh, yeah.
But he played 18 years, and he was those Browns teams in the 80s that lost to Elway and the Broncos. They were run the football, play defense kind of teams. So Clay Matthews would be my third guy, honorable mention. And then the fourth one was kind of close. I ended up going with Paul Warfield. And he was in the 60s. He was probably the best wide receiver that the Browns had for that in the 60s. And he was on the 1964 championship team, Hall of Fame inductee. And that was an era where passing was still, the Browns were probably ahead of the curve against other teams, even in the 40s with Otto Graham.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys, as far as passing the ball. But I had Paul Warfield. Now, with those being honorable mentions, there are some fan favorites that people would argue for. Brian Sipe won the MVP award.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Had no other Pro Bowls, had one great year where he threw 28 touchdowns and got to Red Right 88 game and lost. And then Bernie Kosar, who grew up in Ohio and manipulated the draft system so he could be in the supplemental draft and get drafted by the Browns.
Yep.
Is Bernie still active in the community in Cleveland?
He is. He does a lot of the broadcast for the local affiliates.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I heard.
He does all the preseason games. If you go to clevelandbrowns.com or some of those things, he'll help do some coverage. And he's had some unique things, with his broadcasting career. But he's beloved in Cleveland.
Yeah. I thought Bernie was like, some people might want him on the Mount Rushmore, honestly, because he's had such a influence after the fact too.
Yeah, without a doubt. But he's definitely in that beloved
player
category.
Yep.
His numbers, when you look at his numbers, he was really like an efficiency guy.
Yeah.
He wouldn't lose you the game. He wouldn't get intercepted. Over 6 years, he had the lowest interception percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he had an NFL record for consecutive throws without interception.
Yeah, Bernie's you think about the fact that the drive, the fumble, could completely rewrote what Bernie Kosar's history might have been,
And what people don't realize is that in that drive game, Bernie threw a 55-yard touchdown to Brian Brennan to give them the lead. And the problem was they didn't use enough time.
Mm-hmm.
They got such a big play. In fact, Brian Brennan beat my high school teacher out for the last wide receiver spot.
Oh, wow.
My high school gym teacher, yeah.
Yeah.
He was in training camp, and it was him or Brian Brennan for the last spot, and Brian Brennan beat him out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's my honorable mention, guys.
Nice.
Now, as far as the main guys, one's kind of unique as far as the Mount Rushmore, and I think the unique one is Paul Brown. And I think most franchises would not put a coach or an owner on their Mount Rushmore, but he had such an impact on pro football. He helped start the AAFC, and he was the owner of the Browns. And then he also coached the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he was pretty successful. He coached at Massillon High School. He won 4 state championships. Then he went to Ohio State and won a national championship as a coach.
Oh, wow.
So he literally worked all the way up through the ranks.
Yeah.
Then became the owner of the Browns and was the coach. And under his direction, they won 7 championships.
Nice.
3 NFL championships and 4 AAFC championships. And then a lot of people don't know this, but Paul Brown is the first guy to use game film to scout opponents. He was also the guy who created the face mask because the game was being considered so dangerous that he actually was the first person to design and implement a face mask to be used with the helmets.
Oh, wow.
And there are a lot of people don't know this either, but he was also the first guy to bring in black players on the team. And that was, if you think about it, he was coaching the Browns in the 40s. And, back then, like Ernie Davis was the first guy to win the Heisman. That wasn't until the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So 20 years before there was the first black Heisman winner, Paul Brown was signing, black players to the team.
The guy's name was Motley something.
Yeah, and he was good, and he played running back, fullback, and linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So like stuff you don't see anymore, kind of like a Swiss Army knife of football players.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think you definitely got to put Paul Brown in there, and then he had to sell ownership of the team to Art Modell. Art Modell kicked him out. He goes to Cincinnati. He's the GM at Cincinnati, and he has to choose between Sam Weish and Bill Walsh.
Oh.
He chooses Sam Weish. Bill Walsh goes to San Francisco. You know what happens there.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But Sam Weish couldn't have been that bad of a, second choice because he ended up bringing
You're
Cincinnati to 2 Super Bowls in the 80s. So,
You're right.
but unfortunately lost both of them to Bill Walsh.
Correct. But I think Walsh had a bigger impact on the game.
Oh yeah.
As far as systems, the West Coast offense, using running backs in the passing game, having a first, second, third read, that kind of stuff. And then
It didn't hurt that he had Joe Montana as quarterback too.
in fact, a lot of people realize this, but that team that beat the Dolphins, I think in Super Bowl, might have been 19, I'm not sure.
It was like 1984, 85, 84, yeah, 84.
When they beat the Dolphins, it might have been January of 85 they played that game.
Yeah.
But that team only lost one game all year.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat the Bears and the Giants in the playoffs, I believe, to get to that game. You're talking about some of the best defensive teams in football history.
Yeah.
And then to beat Dan Marino, who had Pat Mahomes numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so moving on with the next guy in the Mount Rushmore, I think you got to go with Otto Graham, which, once again, 7 championships, 3 NFL, 4 AFC, 5 MVPs.
Wow.
3 in the NFL. In an era where the game is mainly running the ball, here comes a system where they're throwing the football and using the forward pass to win games. So Otto Graham, Brady's got 6 rings?
Mm-hmm.
And Otto Graham's got 7.
Yeah.
Now we think of that era differently because it's pre-Super Bowl,
Yeah.
but still pretty big accomplishment.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
Then the next guy's
He was back in the day where they wore leather helmets, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Pre-face mask.
Yeah.
And then you have Lou Groza. Lou Groza plays left tackle and is the place kicker. The only guy else I can think of that could do that is maybe Sebastian Janikowski.
Right.
And he might have to play guard.
Right.
But this guy hit a game-winning field goal in the NFL championship to beat the Rams, and then he's playing left tackle and blocking for the quarterback. So he was a 9-time Pro Bowler, and he's unique because he played with Otto Graham and he played with Jim Brown. So he's kind of the connecting piece between those AAFC teams and the Jim Brown teams that won in '64.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yep.
He was on both of those teams.
Oh, nice.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And he actually won NFL MVP one year.
Oh wow.
So
As a left tackle and kicker?
left tackle and kicker, MVP of the league, and he hit a game-winning field goal in the NFL championship.
Wow.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And he's an Ohio State product, homegrown talent.
Nice.
That's awesome.
And then the last guy, I think it's pretty obvious, he's probably on the NFL Mount Rushmore, and it's Jim Brown, considered in college, even today, to be probably the best lacrosse player ever to play.
Oh wow.
Probably won the Heisman Trophy, but he got snubbed because of the era. 8-time first team All-Pro, 8 times. 3 times NFL MVP. Won that 64 championship, and career yards per game average of 5.2 yards per carry.
Wow.
And the only guy I can think of that even reminds me of him is Bo Jackson. You know, considering the era, considering size and speed and yards per carry,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he probably retired early because, you know, Modell came in and there were some issues with Jim Brown or Paul Brown and Jim Brown. And then he was getting movie offers. So he was probably the first player, like we've seen Andrew Luck and Barry Sanders retire early. You know, Jim Brown walked away from the game early, but as far as physically, I bet he has no regrets.
Right.
I know that like in the 80s, I remember seeing I think it was a Sports Illustrated cover, and he's like in Raiders garb, and it was saying something like Jim Brown's considering returning or something like that. And I think that it was like almost like people like took it seriously because he was still in really great shape, I think. But I always heard Jim Brown was a man amongst boys as far as the way the way he just dominated the league in those. And I've never seen him. Got to see him play. So I don't ever, I mean, it's just like considered Jim Brown's the best running back of all time. So I always like, well, the best running backs I've ever seen are Barry Sanders and Adrian Peterson. And
like, I love watching Barry Sanders play because he changed the position, just his ability to dance and maneuver and almost make it look like a karate movie. Like avoiding people, you know, spinning, like the Matrix. Spinning.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's why when I think of Bo Jackson, a power runner that's big and has speed, you know, Brown could run over you or speed by you.
Yep.
There really wasn't much dancing and maneuvering around contact back then. There's more you would either outrun them or run through them.
Yep.
I think Barry Sanders probably changed the game totally as far as his ability to change direction and stop and start, stop and start. He reversed the field, you know. But you think about a guy that's like 6'2", 230, 240 pounds going downhill against you and running.
Yeah.
You know, I think if Bo Jackson played a full career and didn't play baseball, I think him and Jim Brown had kind of a similar probably careers.
Yep.
Yeah, but Jim Brown was probably almost as big as some of the linemen back in those days.
Oh, yeah. Watch some of those old videos and watch how fast he's running.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about the game is, you know, 10 yards now is the same as 10 yards back then.
Yep.
You kind of see how fast he's moving.
Yeah.
And as big as and strong as he was, man, the guy could do some damage.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
And so that kind of round out my honorable mention and my Cleveland Browns Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Our list is pretty much exactly the same for the most part. We bumped Paul Brown up to like the face of the franchise. I don't know if and then it looks like and with him as the face of the franchise, we kind of slid Ozzy up onto the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I think people would.
Yeah.
So I think that was the only difference between but we've got all those guys on our honorable mention list and Mount Rushmore. So I you did a great job, man. Loved it.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
So I think we got a chance to talk to you a little bit about some great stories you have, and we'd love to have you back on in a future episode, and maybe you could share some more. It's been a absolute blast, and like we said, we really love your Instagram page.
Yeah,
man, some of those cards just blow me away, and I think
that the Joe Montana gold vinyl.
Yeah.
One. So I was at the National. I had a table, and there was a breaker to my right that had latent sports cards come over, and Leighton had just bought the Tom Brady 101.
Oh, yeah.
And they were talking about it, and so I walked over casually and said, "Hey, here's the Joe Montana." and they put those two cards together, the Joe Montana 101 autograph gold vinyl out of Honors and the Brady. I think the Brady's out of the 2018, the Montana's out of 2016 Honors.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, only at the National when you have both of these cards.
You're right.
Yeah.
Each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's one of my favorite football cards.
That's a priceless picture right there, man.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you back on down the road. Exactly that kind of story right there. You know, some of the stuff you shared with us already, I'm just like, wow, that's crazy. That's amazing. You got anything that you want to add before we come to a close here?
Hopefully they turn it around, man.
Oh yeah.
They got the talent. I think they have a lot of pressure on them. You know, when you coach, pressure can make you a worse coach.
Yep. Last year you guys had no pressure at all, and you were the darlings in the NFL. This year, all these primetime games, everybody's expecting the world from Cleveland, and it's.
Well, you know, the last game is very telling. I think Coach Kitchens wanted to prove a point. I think he wanted to beat Seattle 55-6.
Mm-hmm.
And they scored the first 3 touchdowns, and they got going. Instead of playing it safe and winning 40-20, they pushed the pedal to the metal and it backfired.
Yeah.
You know, and like as an Ohio guy, I wish we had a little bit more of Jim Tressel mentality, which was don't beat yourself, possess the ball, you know, give the ball to Nick.
Yeah, get the lead, and work the clock.
Well, I think it might be one of those things where we have to let, you know, Baker be more of a game manager and pick his spots and share the ball around, you know, to different people, but be a running team and a defensive team first. Let that open up your passing game, and we keep trying to be like Kansas City and these other teams, and we just keep turning the ball over and losing the possession battle. Then our defense on the field for too long.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, you got no gas left.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I feel like we got to get a team identity. But you think about guys like Nick Chubb and Baker and Odell and Myles Garrett.
Yeah, that guy's a beast.
Think about if they get it going, a lot of it's on the coach. Sorry.
That's all right.
Kind of flip. A lot of it's on the coach just to define the style of play.
Yeah.
And if he'll just calm down, and I think him and Baker are the keys because they're both aggressive.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with being aggressive, but it can make you lose too.
Right.
You know?
What's really tough too for you guys is like you're watching the Browns. What is their record? Right? Is it 2-3 right now?
I think they're 2-4.
Okay, 2-4. I couldn't remember if they had. Are they having their bye week this week?
This week they play the Patriots next week.
Okay, yeah, I was like thinking that they're playing fantasy football. You kind of have an idea of buys, and I'm like, was that last week or this week? I don't own any Browns, but you're watching a football game, and Baker Mayfield's on every single commercial break, and he's been given a lot of spotlight just on the promise of what he could be versus.
Yeah, I think sometimes success. Like the success of last year, it set you up for failure this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just I think last year, as a starter, he went like 7-6, and so it kind of felt good.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you compare him to Lamar Jackson, they say Lamar Jackson put on 15 pounds of muscle this offseason to prepare for the physical toll of running the ball. And we think about Baker Mayfield got married. He's been in like 12 commercials. He doesn't – I wouldn't say he looks stronger or more athletic or toned than last year. So I think this year – and he's coming off a hip injury. So I think it's one of those things where maybe the success of last year and then all these increased expectations when Odell came over and then a first-year head coach, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need that to recalibrate and eat some humble pie.
Yep.
and then that process can make you get refocused.
Right.
So I'm hoping that happens during the season, because if you look at their next 8 games, if they were to beat New England, like they should have beat LA and they should have beat Seattle. If they could beat New England, the next 7 or 8 opponents are very winnable games.
Oh, you guys have a really, really, it looks like a very favorable schedule going the second half of the season for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where we beat ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most frustrating thing. Like I've coached before. I coached 15 years in college sports. And I used to always tell my teams, I don't mind if we get beat. If the other team just beats us because they're better than us, or they play better than us today, but let's not lose because we beat ourselves.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Because that's worse.
Yeah.
Like the one you can like go to bed at night and like, man, they were just better than us.
Yeah.
Or hey, they just played better than us today.
Yeah.
But when you go home and you're like, man, we're better than them, we outplayed them, and we found a way to lose, that's like the worst.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what they're going through.
Yep, having regrets of the stupid plays you made. If we wouldn't have done this, if we wouldn't have done this.
Well, and then and a lot of that falls on the coach.
Yep.
Like the coach has to be he got to have his fingers on the pulse
Right.
of when to be aggressive, when to play it safe.
Yep.
And if I like Coach Kitchens a lot. He's the right kind of mentality in person, but he's got to be more comfortable with the pressure.
Right.
The only thing that calms that pressure in a coach is past experience to draw from.
Yep.
And then the sooner you learn from your mistakes, the better because the team will reflect the mentality of the coach. If the coach is calm and collected, that's why Belichick in New England tries to be so boring. Because he knows when you're in a high pressure competitive environment, sometimes the best thing you can do is just be level-headed.
Yep.
Joe Montana was not some crazy hype guy. He was great because when it mattered the most, he was the coolest guy in the room.
Right.
He never flipped out or changed who he was. And so I think the sooner we can find that identity and get some composure and relax in the midst of, chaotic competition, the sooner we'll get back on a winning track. Right.
Well, I think that would be a good time to get back together, is maybe after 6 or 7 games and see what the record's like and talk a little bit about that, and you can bring up some more stories. If you want to hold on 1 second, we're just gonna bring this part of the episode to a conclusion, and then maybe we'll chat for another minute if you got a second.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's gonna bring episode 33's Monday's Mount Rushmore, the Cleveland Browns with James at Baseball Card Exchange, to a close.
Skol Brothers out.
All right, thanks for watching the episode today. We like to end every video with a little giveaway. How did we decide we're going to do it? We're going to post a video.
And then a week later, or comment right away, but but a week later, we're going to close the giveaway and ship out, do a randomizer if we get more than one comment.
Right.
And if we just get one comment, then you
Guess
automatically
what? You got
win.
it.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is comment below whether you would want to do a black grab bag, blue grab bag, and of course our preference, purple.
Go purple.
Yeah. So again, thanks for watching. And after the video drops 1 week later, boom, go with that, huh?
Yeah.
Skol Brothers out.
Skol Brothers out.